the sins against chastity. Okay, last, we'll go back to that when we get to the ninth commandment, because Jesus Christ said in Matthew chapter Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. Thou shalt not commit adultery. He said you can commit adultery by simply looking at a woman with lust. Okay, we'll get back to that, okay, when we go to the ninth commandment. And then, of course, we have to teach our children that masturbation is wrong. It is wrong. It is a sin. Fornication. Fornication. Having relationship or sexual activity outside of marriage is fornication. And that has been so common now. Even engaged couples. Nowadays, I think the practice is before you really get married, let's have a trial marriage. Let's live together and find out whether we're really meant for each other. You know? I know a lot of engaged couples doing that. They live together for some time, try to find out, because and their concern is, well, we don't want to be divorcing each other. Might as well try it out now. That is not a justification for fornication, because at the end, you have the rule, and it's not something that can be diluted in any way. Like teaching sex is exclusively reserved for marriage. Okay. And of course, it's even worse when it is an adultery, because fornication is having an affair with someone who is not married. Okay. And it becomes adultery when it is with someone who is already married. That is even worse, because it violates the right of the other spouse, of course. And, it injures the marriage bond of the parties involved. And even compromises the welfare of the children. Yeah.
Just sensible was saying, fornication, thou shalt not commit fornication is not a commandment. So therefore, to me, to this person, adultery is committed if a married person has sex with someone outside of that marriage. So that's adultery, right?
Right.
So if you're not married, then how could you be committing adultery?
If you're married but you have an affair or sexual relation with a married person, you are also guilty of adultery. That is very clear in Scripture. Besides, we cannot be technical about the words used in the commandment. Remember, the commandment is just a summary of the actual command given by God. Okay? But that's why we have to learn what the commandments really mean. That is what this course is all about morality. It covers far, far more than what the word said to connote to. That's why Jesus Christ even said, even just looking at a woman with lust makes you commit adultery. Okay. What more of having relations with someone just because both of you are not married? We haven't committed. That's being too technical. We haven't committed adultery because we're both single. Okay. The sixth commandment covers much, much more than that. And Jesus Christ made that clear. And he said that in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27.
So I can say this person, adultery covers fornication.
Yes. So and point out Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. You have heard that it is a sin to be with adultery, but I tell you, just looking at the woman at another person with lust, yes, you have already committed adultery in your heart. Just like killing. Okay?
Well, we don't kill the guy, we don't violate the command, right?
We have what we call the homicide of the heart. Your hatred, your anger qualifies you to fall within the fifth commandment. We took that up last night. Right. So, and then of course pornography. Pornography in and of itself itself is evil, intrinsically evil. I mentioned this to you, I know, but I'll mention it again for the sake of those who are here for the first time. Because some people think that, especially married couples, that it's all right to look at pornographic magazines in order to enhance their sexual life. Okay? As a matter of fact, a bishop was asked about that in the community where I'm from one time. And unfortunately, the bishop said, okay, you're trying to improve your sexual relationship, and that's fine in a marriage context, so I think that's fine. That's what he said. And of course, that's absolutely wrong, because the end does not justify the means. What is absolutely and intrinsically evil cannot be justified as a means to achieve a good end. Right. So, pornography in any form is, in and of itself, evil. Of course, you know about prostitution, you know about rape. Let's go to homosexual acts. Keep in mind, we're talking about homosexual act, not homosexuality, because there are, in fact, homosexual people. There are. It's a fact. We must face it now. And we should respect them, and we should treat them with dignity. However, the church never allows homosexual acts, meaning to say having sexual relations with a person of the same sex. Why? Again, because the sexual act is exclusively for marriage between a man and a woman. Now they're trying to redefine marriage between a man and a man and a woman and so on and so forth. That is absolutely absurd. So let's see what the Catechism says about it. 2357. Homosexuality refers to relations between men or between women who experience an exclusive or predominant sexual attraction toward persons of the same sex. Basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as acts of great depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. They do not proceed from a genuine affective and sexual complementarity. Under no circumstances can they be approved. The act itself. Then, the number of men and women who have exhibited homosexual tendencies is not negligible. There are many of them. This inclination, which is objectively disordered, constitutes for most of them a trial. They must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided. So we shouldn't be homophobic in the sense that oh, he's an homosexual. I'm not going to, even talk to him. No, they should be they're part of our society. They have their own dignity as persons. These persons are called to fulfill God's will in their lives, and if they are Christians, to unite with the sacrifice of the Lord's cross, the difficulties they may encounter from their condition. Homosexual persons are called to chastity, just like heterosexual persons. If you are heterosexual, you are supposed to be in control of your passion for sex while not married, because you can only have sex again when you are married. So there are no different. Their condition is no different than the heterosexuals in that sense, because even heterosexuals have their natural desire for the opposite sex, but you should put that under control until you get married to her or to him. Okay? So the same is true with homosexuals. Okay, you're a homosexual, but you have to put that under control. You cannot live it out. You cannot live it out without marriage. But you cannot marry a person of the same sex. Okay. By the virtues of self-mastery, we teach them inner freedom, at times by the support of disinterested friendship. By prayer and sacramental grace, they can and should gradually and resolutely approach Christian perfection. So, the church would never allow the homosexuals to act out their homosexuality. It is against God's law. But where is that in Scripture? Oh, I tell you, in the Episcopalian Church, you've heard about it. They have just ordained a bishop who is a practicing gay, right? And he was living with this man in the church. And then, so they submitted this to the church. And the church voted to ordain it. See? Sexuality, morality is something that men vote for? No, of course not. We did not vote God into office, did we? God tells us what is right and what is wrong. You cannot determine it by just voting for it, by consensus. Because the consensus of man, if we are just to rely on the consensus of man, is evil. Without God, we are evil. Okay. Where is that in Scripture? What about the account of Sodom and Gomorrah? God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of homosexual practices prevalent in that town. Okay. And then we have it in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 to 10. Very clearly, in Corinthians it says here, whoever, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 to 10. Do not be deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, and nor boy prostitutes, nor sodomites will inherit the kingdom of heaven. So there is a clear basis, even in the Scripture, that sodomites or homosexuals acting out their homosexuality can never inherit the kingdom of heaven. So always distinguish that. Whenever you come into a discussion of this question of homosexuality, you must be able to distinguish between desire and orientation. You have that desire, you have that orientation, that's right, from acting it out, living it out. In fact, there are two national organizations of homosexuals. One of them, one organization is called Courage. Courage. This is an organization of homosexuals to support one another in their determination to live in chastity. Very good. Many national organizations of homosexuals. So they conform to the teaching of the church. So they just submit to the church as a teacher. Now, there's another national organization of homosexuals, and they call this Dignity. That's the name. And what is their mission statement? That we should be recognized, and we should justify to our right to live out our natural, our homosexuality. So what are they trying to do in this case? They're trying to say that the church cannot teach them what is right and what is wrong. So the church is the pupil, they are the teacher actually. So it is possible, it has been proven scientifically, psychologically, that homosexuals can live a changed life. And I know of homosexuals who were able to marry in a normal setting, okay, the opposite sex, and have now have children and have a happy family. And I know for a fact that he was homosexual, but he was able to overcome it some way, somehow. So it's very important that we maintain sexual morality in our society, because the effect of sexual morality is it has wrought so much social evil in our society. And I don't know, when did when did we start having this virus, the AIDS? I thought that was unheard of, like when I was a kid. When did we start having AIDS?
84 or 85, that's when it started, when it came over here.
Yeah. Only recently did we start having this AIDS virus. They mutate. This virus, they mutate. They related to the point where they become dead. Do you know how many people have been killed by AIDS? In Africa, practically one town was obliterated by AIDS. Almost everybody died of AIDS. What do you think God is trying to tell us? And of course, because of our sexual promiscuity, there have been a lot of abortion. And you know that the abortion Holocaust, so to speak, far exceeds the Jewish Holocaust. Millions and even billions now have been killed through abortion. So this is what this immorality, sexual immorality brings about in our society. Okay, so let's go to a real controversial issue in this, in regard to the moral issue of sex. The sin against procreation. Artificial contraception. I know that up to now this is a raging issue, despite humanity. What is artificial contraception? Artificial contraception is you want to have sex, but you do not want to have a baby. Right? Sex without baby. And what does it include? I have here a list of, a partial list only of the artificial contraception being resorted to. Okay. We have, it includes condoms as part of artificial contraception, diaphragms, spermicides, birth control, IUDs, new products like Depo-Provera. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a drug injected that works like a birth control pill, and it lasts for months. Norplant, RU-486. You know, actually, the RU-486 abort the fetus. It's being promoted as a birth control pill. It is not. It is to abort already the fetus. Yeah. Artificial contraception may also be in the form of sterilization. For women, we have what we call tubal ligation. And for men, we have vasectomy. Right? Vasectomy, tubal ligation and vasectomy. Well, what are you trying to prevent? You are trying to prevent having a baby. What question I was asked about this, what if you have had already your vasectomy? Are you required by the church to reverse that? No. Because it has been proven that it is not. The uncertainty of reverse, the success of reversal is not reassured. Besides, it's a very costly operation, and there will be some surgical risk involved. So if you have had that and you didn't know that at that time, just need to be sorry for it, go to confession. You don't need to go through operation in order to reverse it. So any form of contraception, do you know what? That has always been the teaching of the church, and that has always been accepted by the church, even by our Protestant brothers and sisters. When did it start being questioned? Sometime only in 1930, when people became aware of limiting the number of children in the family. They got scared of population explosion. But up to 1930, even in the Protestant world, they have always accepted the teaching of the Church of artificial contraception. This is the church position, paragraph 2366 on artificial contraception. The church, which is on the side of life, teaches that it is necessary that each and every marriage act remain ordered per se to the procreation of human life. This particular doctrine, expounded on numerous occasions by the magisterium, is based on the inseparable connection established by God, which man on his own initiative may not break, between the unitive significance and the procreative significance, which are both inherent to the marriage act. Again, over and over, the Catechism is always reminding us of the unitive and the procreative essence of marriage. Because artificial contraception is against the procreative essence of marriage. Right? And then in paragraph 2370, it says, every action which, whether in anticipation of the conjugal act, or in its accomplishment, or in the development of its natural consequences, proposes, whether as an end or as a means to render procreation impossible, is intrinsically, there you go, intrinsically evil. So, but the question is, humanity is probably just something that must not be taken as an ex-cathedra announcement or pronouncement of the church, and therefore it's not a dogma. Sometimes we get confused about this thing. We only submit to the dogma, but not to other teachings of the church. That is totally, absolutely wrong. We must submit to all the teachings of the church, whether it has been proclaimed as a dogma or not. Do you remember when a teaching is declared a dogma, it is simply to be able to resolve once and for all any more lingering questions on that particular question. But all other teachings of the church are, in a sense, dogmatic in that we ought to submit to them. Like the teaching of the church on the divinity of Jesus Christ. Are you free to believe and not to believe that Jesus Christ is God? You are not. And has there been a dogma proclaimed on that? There are only two dogmas proclaimed by the church so far: Assumption, Mary, and Immaculate Conception. Yet still we are not free to believe to believe otherwise, that Jesus Christ is God. See, remember that? Trinity, and many other teachings of the church. So this teaching of the church on artificial contraception must be taken seriously, and we must understand that we are supposed to submit completely to the teaching of the church in this regard. It is not something we are free to violate. Yes.
How about if the life of a woman is endangered by pregnancy, contraception?
Yes. Again, at the very first session of this talk on morality, the end does not justify the means. If the woman's health is in line, on the line, the woman just have to refrain from sexual act. If that's the case. Or you just have to step out of faith. That's the teaching of the church. That's the teaching of the church. The end does not justify the means. Last time we even talked about abortion. What if carrying the baby would be dangerous to the health of the woman? That's not withstanding. You cannot abort the baby because you cannot justify the end. The end does not justify the means. Because the means itself is intrinsically evil. If it is intrinsically evil, no matter what it is, unless of course it is an exception to, like killing, you have self-defense. Right? So very clearly, the teaching of the church in this regard is very, very clear and not subject to speculations or justification of any sort. In fact, Humanae Vitae has a very stern warning on priests. I know of some priests who, out of their compassion for the couple, out of their compassion, again, they've got a good end, would wrongly advise the couple to say, yeah, you can, given your condition, you can have artificial contraception. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. That may be the warning given by the church on priests who give this kind of advice to couples. Yeah. If any confessor or pastor of souls, which may, God forbid, lead the faithful entrusted to him into these errors, or should at least confirm them by approval or guilty silence, let him be mindful of the fact that he must render a strict account to God. There's a warning to this. The Supreme Judge for the betrayal of his sacred trust. And let him take to himself the words of Christ. They are blind and leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both fall into the pit. That's Casting Columbi, section 4, issued in 1930. The Pope Pius XI. Pope Pius XI. And in Humanae Vitae, there's this advice to priests, beloved sons who are priests by vocation. I don't know, have you heard of some priests giving advice that artificial contraception is okay?
When we had our third child, and I was in the Catholic hospital, we said, wanted to talk to the priest, what can we do here? We had spare beds. And he said, well, you can take the birth control pill because there's nothing between. That's what he told me. So we took it for a year, but I stopped taking it because I was afraid of it.
Right.
At that time, it was all the fear of the blood clots and we're back in the 60s. And we used to say that. Before after that. But that priest well told me, take the birth control pill.
See, you were misled. You didn't know. You did not. You can commit the sin only if you know that it is a sin. You didn't know at that time, fine. Okay. But you see, it's a fact that some priests, even some priests, advise people that they can have artificial contraception. So this is the Humanae Vitae advice to the priests. Beloved sons who are priests, by vocation you are the counselors and spiritual guides of individuals and families. We now turn to you with confidence. Your first task, especially in the case of those who teach moral theology, is to expound without ambiguity the church teaching on marriage. Be the first to give, in the exercise of your ministry, the example of loyal internal and external submission to the magisterium of the church. In the field of morals as well as in that of dogma, all should adhere to the magisterium of the church and should speak the same language. Not to compromise in any way the saving teaching of Christ. Cannot compromise this. Okay. Very clearly, Humanae Vitae. Let me read to you some excerpts from Humanae Vitae. It has been declared that the direct interruption of the generative process already begun, and above all, directly built and procured abortion, even if for therapeutic reasons, are to be absolutely excluded as lawful means of birth privation. Also to be excluded is direct sterilization, whether perpetual or temporary. Even when the intention is to safeguard or promote individual, family, or social good. So regardless of your intention. Okay. Let us consider how wide and easy a road would thus be open to conjugal infidelity and to general lowering of morality. If you allow artificial contraception, it can be feared that the man who becomes used to contraceptive practices may in the end lose respect for his wife and no longer caring about her physical and psychological well-being, will come to the point of considering her as a mere instrument of selfish enjoyment. So if you can artificially contracept all the time, then it becomes like the act itself is losing already its essence, the essence of marriage. Who will prevent rulers from favoring even imposing upon their people the method of contraception they judge to be the most effective, if they should consider this to be necessary? You know what they're doing now in China? I think women there, after they have a first child, I don't know if it's true, I haven't verified it, I think they are mandated to have an IUD or to have, may always stop their reproductive function imposed by the state. That can happen to us if it has become part of our culture. So, Humanae Vitae is really very, very clear about it. No allowance whatsoever for anything less than a strict prohibition to resorting to artificial contraception. Okay. So, what can you do? The church does allow natural family planning. Okay. Natural family planning, but that's very difficult. I know some people would think that that's almost possible. But it has been determined that natural family planning, if you really know what it is, see, you really need to understand how natural family planning works. It is 99% accurate. Okay. NFP, this natural family planning, allows a couple to postpone or achieve pregnancy by detecting when the life is ovulating. So you just have to have the patience of really trying to detect whether the woman is ovulating or not. It's 99% reliable, just as reliable as the pills. Okay. And then, NFP, which is natural family planning, means abstaining from sex for about a week per month. Is that bad? You abstain for just a week per month. If you really know, if you really master natural family planning, you are not really depriving yourself of the pleasure of sex, because it's just 1 week per month that the woman is really ovulating. And it's a matter of really educating yourself about natural family planning. But some couples are not very keen about learning this. Before, what we used to have to know is just 7 days before and after. That's what my wife and I were always thinking before. 7 days before and after we can have sex. That's 2 weeks in a month. But actually, natural family planning is just 1 week in a month without sex. Can you not refrain from sex for just 1 week in a month? I don't know. So it's not that bad at all. Legitimate birth control. The church is not unreasonable. We just have to learn how to do it. And we just have the patience to really determine for ourselves when to move on the issue. Okay? Artificial contraception. Another sin against procreation, of course, manufacturing baby, test tube babies, call it artificial insemination and fertilization. This time is the opposite. You want to have a baby without sex. So you want to manufacture the baby in a test tube. Paragraph 2376. You know that that is immoral? It is a mortal sin to resort to having a baby without sex. Techniques that entail the dissociation of husband and wife by the inclusion of a person other than the couple, that is donation of sperm or ovum, surrogate uterus, are gravely immoral. These techniques, we call it heterologous, artificial insemination and fertilization, infringe the child's right to be born of a father and mother known to him and bound to each other by marriage. They betray their spouses' right to become a father and a mother only through each other.
So if it's the father's donation and it's the mother's reception, what's the problem?
In
other words, they're having sex, but they can't get pregnant.
Okay.
But medically, it can be done for them through technology. So
Okay.
he donates the sperm, they prepare it for
their own sperm and
to your wife.
Okay, that goes to paragraph 2377. Let me read. Techniques involving only the married couple, homologous artificial insemination and fertilization, are perhaps less reprehensible, yet remain morally unacceptable.
That's why.
Let me just read on. Okay, this is the teaching of the church. They dissociate. Now, I think this is the answer to the why. They dissociate the sexual act from the procreative act. The act which brings the child into existence is no longer an act by which two persons give themselves to one another, but one that entrusts the life and identity of the embryo into the power of doctors and biologists and establishes the domination of technology over the origin and destiny of the human person. Such a relationship of domination is in itself contrary to the dignity and equality that must be common to parents and children. So there's the why. Now, what is the reason behind this? Why does not the church allow couple who sincerely want to have children to resort to artificial insemination? You know what? And the church so addressed that. It issued again an encyclical. This time the encyclical is named Donum Vitae. Donum Vitae. A child is a gift from God. A child is not a matter of one's right. If God does not make it possible to have a child, maybe, but you can adopt, of course. It is not a matter of right. So let me just read the Donum Vitae teaching of the church. Donum Vitae means the gift of God. It declares that medicine and technology must respect the moral law. Not everything that is scientifically possible is morally allowable. Science must always be the servant, not the master of the human person, and respect his God-given rights. Science kept without conscience can lead to human disasters. Married couples do not have an absolute right to have a child. A child is a gift from God, not something God owes them. Parents must not depart from God's plan for the creation of new life. New life must be the product of the natural marital act between husband and wife. So the church is so clear about that. Yeah, because adoption is the child that's being adopted is still a product of the natural marital act between the husband and wife, the parents of that adopted child. See? So, besides, this process of artificial insemination, it involves not just one egg. They choose the healthiest of the eggs and the healthiest of the sperm, so that they can succeed in manufacturing the baby in the best tube. And in the process, they have to kill the other eggs and the other cells. So again, it is not a matter of right to have a child. So you cannot manufacture the baby in a test tube. And the heterologous insemination is even worse because you've heard some cases about surrogate mothers, right? In court. Who is really the mother? Who is to be recognized by the law as the mother? The one who donated the egg or the one who carried it's a very complicated question. I don't know if the court has already decided on that. Okay. So because it results in more than two parents. Both of them seem to have right. Hey, that's my egg. I donated it, but now I changed my mind. I want to have the child. That happened. And between the spouses themselves, I think there's also a case where they try to have a baby without sex, and then they divorce afterwards, and the baby was born. And again, there was this, the divorced parents now fighting over who has the right over this child after they divorce. All right. So much of artificial insemination and fertilization. Next issue is the production of embryo for exploitation. That is also immoral. Paragraph 2275 of the Catechism states, it is immoral to produce human embryos intended for exploitation as disposable biological material. Why? Because you're going to destroy the embryo. So what? Because the embryo is life. So we have this stem cell research and cloning article that I'd like to share with you here. Because this is also a very controversial issue, even in the church. Now, the question is the Catholic Church opposed to all stem cell research? Not at all. Most stem cell research uses cells obtained from adult tissue, umbilical cord blood, and other sources that pose no moral problem. Useful stem cells have been found in bone marrow, blood, muscle, fat, nerves, and even in and they prove to be very useful. But what is the church opposed to is stem cell from an embryo. Embryonic stem cell research. That is what the church is against. Because harvesting these stem cells kills the living human person. Besides, there has not been a single case, they have not determined, despite of millions of dollars already spent in embryonic stem cells, they have not proven that this is really beneficial. Okay. Some have made this claim, but in fact, this is largely speculation. Embryonic stem cells have never treated a human patient, an animal. Okay. They are too genetically unstable. You know, our government now has, under the administration of Bush, he did not outlaw stem cell research, you know that? He still allowed that, but he said that you cannot have any more new embryos for the purpose. But the federal government gave 25 million to human embryonic stem cell research just last year. But on August 9, 2001, President Bush said that the federally funded research would use only embryonic stem cells already in existence, that is obtained by destroying embryos prior to that date. So, we believe that life begins at when? What point? Conception. At conception. As soon as the egg and the sperm meet, there's life. So, again, and of course, human growth will never be recognized as moral. Why? You know how human cloning is done? I think they get the nucleus of the egg of the woman, they electrically stimulated in them so that it could copy the genetic genes. No, that's very technical, of course. But then you come up with exactly the same individual with the same genes. But you know what? We have twins. That's exactly the same genetic makeup, but very different temperaments, right? Why? Because while we are participating in the procreation of man, it is limited to the procreation of the human body, but not the soul. The soul is always created by God. So if the twins would have two different souls, they have two different personalities, two different characters. And that's the same thing with cloning. So you can never clone a soul. So those are all sins against procreation. Now let's go to the ninth commandment. Ninth commandment says that if you look at a woman with lust, you have already committed adultery. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. That's a general statement. Lusting after another other than one's spouse. Okay. What is really the threshold point when lusting becomes a sin? You know, sometimes, especially men, you go over a magazine, you come across a pornographic picture unintentionally. You look at it for a while, then you try to get it off your mind. That's fine. What is wrong is when you start dwelling in it. So what do? You set it up. I know that's pornography. But then you look at it again. Then you start dwelling on it. You start imagining. Then that becomes a mortal sin. So, in other words, just looking at a woman, and you start lusting for a woman, at that single point in time, probably it's not your sin, but when you start dwelling on it, you start fantasizing, and when you start thinking about it more, then it becomes lusting for another, for coveting somebody else's wife or other women. Okay. Now, I think a very, very important principle here. I know sometimes this is a problem for a lot of men. When immodest thoughts come across their mind, some will even start praying, Lord, please help me take this off my mind. But they say that That's good, but stop thinking of it. You know? But you pray about it, but you still pray about it, and you're still thinking about it, then it would sooner or later get into you. So the principle here that I've read about this, the principle of replacement is very good. You know, the mind can only think of one thing at one time. So stop thinking about it and think of something else. That's the best way to overcome the tendency of your human tendency to lust. So I've read some practical help on how to have a good moral heart. Number one, this is humility. Admit that we are weak, that we have the tendency to lust. We have to admit that, because it's only by admitting that we can address it. Okay. So that you will be on guard. Because if you don't admit it, your tendency is to put your guards down and you say, okay, that's fine with me, I can watch an X-rated movie and not be affected by it. Don't be too confident about it, because the devil is very, very smart. In fact, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12 does advise us. And it says, whoever thinks he is standing secure should take care not to fall. I know, because some people say, since I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and my Savior, since I've been converted in my heart, I know I'm very, very strong when it comes to overcoming temptations. Still, we should have the ability to say, yes, I can still fall into it. So you should learn how to avoid the occasions of sin. So overcoming sin is not just dealing with it when it's already there. There is such thing as preventing it. And how do you do that? Avoid the occasion of sins. If you think you can be affected by going to the beach and see these sunbathers there without topless and all that, in some places they do that, avoid going to those places. Okay? Because it weakens your resistance to your natural tendency. Okay? If you think yes. Well, if it keeps on copying, principle of replacement. Think of something else. Think about your financial problem. You know? Think of
One thing is, I always compliment it.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I always compliment it. That's part of my job.
Okay.
And I alternate. Advertising.
Oh, in advertising. Well, that's a tough question because that's your job. Right? But you know, as I said, it's still you need to pray. Of course, you need the grace of God. What did I say before? What have we learned here? We can never transcend our human weakness on our own. No way you can do it. No way you can do it. You need a great special grace. You need a special grace. Without God's grace, without the life of God in you, you cannot. So, be totally submissive to the grace of God. The more grace that you need. You got to pray hard about it. Go to confession as often as you can. Go and receive Holy Communion. That's how you get God's grace. Okay. Right. You should be uncompromising about truth. Don't try to water down the teaching of the church on this. You know, you're only but human. Oh, come on now. Human is supposed to be a creation in the image and likeness of God. Don't demean humanity. Humanity is sacred. You are a God created in the image and likeness of God. So don't demean it by saying you're only human. No, you can transcend your animalistic tendency. You don't say, unless when you say, oh, we're like animals anyway. We're an animal species. Forget it. Don't admit that we belong to the animal species. I never want to accept that. We are an entirely different species. We are a human being with a soul. We are a holy, spiritual being. You know, when we die, we will be resurrected. This mortal body that we have will be resurrected. We know that. This very body that we have will be resurrected. Because it is a sacred confession, be proactive, avoid occasions of sins, resolve to give God everything. Whenever you go to Mass, you offer it up. Sacrifice yourself. Join yourself in the sacrifice, in that offering during the offertory, and surrender all to God. Talk about dying to yourself. That's what dying to yourself is all about. Transcend the flesh, overcome the flesh. Kill your passion, kill your tendency. You can do it but on your own. No way you can do it on your own. As I said again, have compassion. Always pray to God. Always be proactive. Okay? Have a stronger good desire. The images of motherhood overcome images of impurity. See, always think of your mother. The sacrifice that they went through to be able to give life to you. The sacredness, the birth. That's why it's good now that husbands are always summoned to watch the mother deliver the baby. During our time, we were not allowed. Now, I know now that husbands are even encouraged to see for themselves how the wife is delivering the baby so that they can have a sense of sacredness by life being born and of the sacrifice that the mother is going through when giving birth. So you would have more respect for sex. Okay. Remember the victims of your thoughts and actions. Remember who you are. You are a child of God. Remember that good is infinitely stronger than evil. And most of all, observe modesty. Very important. We get very much entertained when we joke about sex, right? Almost all kinds of jokes, some way, somehow, inevitably would involve sex. It's against modesty in our speech. We call it green jokes. I don't know if that's termed here too. Okay. Paragraph 22, 25, 22. Oh, 25, 21 verse. Purity requires modesty, an integral part of temperance. Modesty protects the intimate center of the person. Then the last sentence of that is, it guides how one looks at others and behaves toward them in conformity with the dignity of persons and their solidarity. Paragraph 25, 22. Second to the last sentence. Modesty is decency. It inspires one's choice of clothing. The way you dress up. Do you know that in the Basilica, there's a dress code? Women are not allowed to go inside the Basilica with sleeveless shirt. Okay? Or plunging neckline. That's a no-no. I think that should be a rule in every church. Because some people go to church and scandalize other people. And sometimes offend some people. By the way they dress up inside the church. Some people cannot concentrate praying when you see these women. I don't know what they are. Modesty is decency. It inspires one's choice of clothing. It keeps silence or reserved where there is evident trace of unhealthy curiosity. It is discreet. There is a modesty of the feelings as well as of the body. It protests, for example, against the voyeuristic explorations of the human body in certain advertisements. Nowadays, talk about Carl's Jr. What has sex to do with eating hamburger? See? But what kind of advertisement? It's all about sex to attract them to their product, even if there is no relevance whatsoever to the product, to sex. Or against the solicitations of certain media that go too far in the exhibition of intimate things. Modesty inspires a way of life which makes it possible to resist the allurements of fashion and the pressures of prevailing ideologies. 25-24, last sentence. Teaching modesty to children and adolescents means awakening in them respect for the human person. It all boils down to that when it comes to sex. Respect for the human person. Our humanity must chastity is all about integrating our sex makeup into our person God, I know that we have learned much tonight about the about sexual morality. It is important that we understand this, and for us, who have children, even grandchildren now, it is our duty to impart this. Because don't ever let sex education be given